So in this video we're going to talk about how to activate, fire, train the glutes. Okay, the glutes fire through flexion, adduction, internal rotation. So first off we're going to look at ways to release the hips with regards to extension, abduction and external rotation. Once we've done that, we'll look at isolating the glutes and how to try and get the brain to recognise that muscle group and how to fire it on its own. But then importantly, we've got to look at recruiting that muscle group into a functional full body movement sequence, as that's the only truly way it's going to work. Glutes, very important muscle in terms of lower leg and all body stabilisation, power. A lot of people with lower back problems probably don't fire the glutes too well. So first off we look at how to release extension. To do that, want to mobilise hip extension, ensure toes press down against the floor, squeeze the glutes, drive the hips forwards. You can add a bit of thoracic extension, we can add some thoracic rotation or some lateral flexion in there, or we can simply just drive the hips in different planes of motion. Okay, really easy way of creating hip extension to loosen off that. So that's really going to help glute max. Now we want to look at getting glute min and glute med, massive stabilizing muscles, and to do that we need to look at adduction. So a side lunge, very simple way of doing this. Keep the foot flat, keep this leg straight, squeeze that left glute. Okay, we're going to start driving a little bit of thoracic mobility into that again, reaching one way, reaching the other way. We can start adding a little bit of depth. We can start adding a bit of external rotation now as well. And now we can make that into more external by leg straight, glute squeeze, start rotating around. And then we can flex the knee a little. Keep bracing, start rotating that way. If we ever do this, we want to make sure that knee stays in line with the toes, takes pressure off the knee. Okay, so that should loosen up that hip flexor, that should feel pretty good. Now we want to look at a few ways to isolate those glutes. So ways we can do that in terms of glute max, we can do sort of a Pilates style leg raise at the back, and you can even take that if you wanted to into a Superman type position to try and load the whole of that posterior chain. We could take that all into different types of bridges, so we could push up, squeezing the glutes. We could go into a single leg bridge, we could go into a marching bridge, or we can go into a Coac hip drop where one leg's up, you can rest the tennis ball in there, and you've got to push up on its own, like that. Other ways we can do this, if we want to start looking at glute min and glute med, is we can lie on our side. We want hips 45 degrees, knees 90 degrees. Okay, we can lie down, elbow has to stay flat to the floor. Okay, upper leg completely straight, and then we raise that straight up, like that. Okay, to make this harder, we could put bands around our legs. So I could put them around my knees. And again, I go into that same starting position. This time ankles are together, and we can go into a clam. So ankles stay together and I rotate up like this. I could raise the whole leg up like that, or I can go for that leg straight and raise up like that. Again, adds a little bit more resistance, gets those glutes engaged. We could make that exercise a little bit more dynamic and just take that into some very simple glute walks. So we can go feet wide, shoulders back, little soft legs, and just start doing a couple of side type steps. We can look at walking back and walking forwards. And again, We could also add a little squat into that as well, just to engage those glutes with a little bit of resistance. Okay? So, once we've done those glutes should be neurally quite fired up. The brain should be able to find and recognise those glute muscles now. We want to use it now functionally. Best way to functionally train the glutes is through flexion, adduction and internal rotation. In a lunge, driving flexion, we can simply do that. We could reach a bit more, okay? Want to get a bit of adduction now, we can start stepping across the body, as so. Or we could drive a bit of thoracic mobility, like that. Internal rotation, we can start driving a little bit of internal rotation by pointing the toes internally, or we could lunge and rotate by driving it through the thoracic. If you want to combine them all, it would look like this. So we'd step out, turn the toes in, step across, right arm up, left arm's going to come across the body, like that. So it's going to look like that. And that's really going to fire those glutes up in every plane of motion they want to fire in. We can also really get glute max by taking that into a functional movement, and by getting glute max, we've got to get really low and start driving it heavily in the sagittal plane. Glute max is very much sagittal, which is a forwards. Glute min and med are very much transverse and frontal plane. We can also play around with adding in heights, so you add in depth, very good for the hip flexors as well. Or we could do single leg lowerings off. Okay. If we consider the glutes very good stabilisers, want to increase maybe a balance matrix. So some single leg squatting, glutes engaged, nice and tall, abs engaged, and we can start adding some reaches in. Some reaches with the feet in. I call this a little balance matrix. So you're trying to engage the body in as many different positions as it can go in. And it's really going to fire those stabilizers. Very good for ankle mobility and ankle strength as well. And the final point to talk about is squatting. If we're looking at the glutes, if most people you see squat and only get to knee height, that's only going to be quad. It's going to be very quad dominant. To go below the knees, you're only then going to start recruiting hamstrings and glutes. So, if we get feet 10 to 2 position, suck in the abs, okay, hands up, push up, head up, squeeze the glutes. You want to be working to get in below that knee height. And that way, a squat will become an effective exercise to load the glutes. If it's not at that depth, it's just not going to happen. So glutes, extremely important exercise. It can be recruited in pretty much everything. If you're looking at real good traditional strength exercises, you're looking at squats, deadlifts, glute bridge with loaded, lunges, single leg squats, everything will incorporate glute recruitment. So it's very important to include that as part of a warm-up or any kind of rehab program you may do. Thank you.